The auction yard was crowded that day, though no one seemed to truly want what was being sold. Beneath the harsh sun, the dust swirled around tired faces, and men shuffled their boots while women whispered. Among the cattle pens and wagons filled with odds and ends, a shocking transaction took place, one that would forever change two broken lives. A girl, barely out of childhood herself, stood trembling as her own mother pulled her forward, declaring to the crowd that she was with child and had become a burden she could no longer carry. Her mother's words were sharp, as if the shame weighed heavier than the life growing inside the girl. With eyes lowered, one hand protectively resting on her swollen belly, the young woman stood in silence, waiting to be traded like livestock. The murmurs grew louder, crueler, until the rancher appeared. A man known for his solitude, a man who carried silence like a second skin, stepped forward with steady boots, lifted his gaze, and without hesitation offered the few bills he had. He didn't buy her out of desire, nor out of selfish need. He bought her because he could not bear the sight of hopelessness carved into the face of someone so young, so fragile, yet carrying so much. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of love to heal the deepest wounds, make sure to like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Stories Collection so you never miss stories that touch the heart. The rancher's name was Jacob, a man in his 40s who lived alone on wide, wind-swept land far away from town. His neighbors whispered of his loneliness, of how his house remained dark through winters, and how his laughter had not been heard in years. Some said he had lost too much to ever hope again. A wife who died too young, a child who never drew its first breath. He had buried his heart along with them, choosing silence over society, cattle over company. And yet, something in him stirred that day at the auction. When he saw the young woman fragile, but standing in quiet defiance with her unborn child, he recognized the same emptiness that haunted him. Without words, he paid and led her away, ignoring the sneers and whispers of others. To them, he was a fool. To him, he had simply taken a soul out of despair. Her name was Anna. She barely spoke for days after arriving at Jacob's ranch, retreating into silence as heavy as his own. The house was sturdy but bare, with wooden floors that echoed footsteps and windows that framed the endless horizon. She moved through the rooms timidly, unsure if she was guest or prisoner. Jacob never raised his voice, never imposed demands. He gave her space, offering food, water, and the shelter of his home. At night, she would sit by the window, holding her belly, whispering promises to the child growing inside her. Jacob, sitting by the fire with his old dog, would steal glances at her reflection in the glass. So young, yet carrying burdens no one her age should know. But healing does not happen overnight. Anna carried wounds that ran deep. Wounds carved not only by her mother's betrayal, but by years of neglect and hunger. Trust was not something she could give freely. She expected cruelty, expected abandonment, because that was all she had known. Jacob, on the other hand, fought his own ghosts. He was afraid to hope, afraid to feel again, for memories of loss had taught him that love was dangerous, a gift easily stolen by fate. Together they lived under the same roof, two strangers bound by circumstance, yet quietly watching one another from the edges of silence. As weeks turned into months, small changes began to soften the air between them. Jacob, though rugged and reserved, showed his care not in words, but in actions. He would leave fresh bread on the table before heading to the fields. He mended a rocking chair for her comfort, sanding it smooth so she could sit with ease. He built a crib by hand, shaping the wood with tenderness that surprised even him. Anna noticed these things, though she seldom spoke of them. Her trust grew not in leaps, but in small, careful steps, like a timid deer learning the path through a meadow. Then came the night of the storm. Rain hammered the roof and wind howled against the windows. Anna woke in pain, clutching her belly, fear surging through her veins. Jacob rushed to her side, his calm breaking into urgency. He had not delivered a child before, yet instinct and desperation guided him. The hours stretched long, filled with cries and trembling, until at last a new sound pierced the night, the wail of a newborn. A daughter, tiny and fragile, wrapped in Jacob's weathered hands. Tears filled his eyes as he looked at the miracle of life, the miracle he thought he would never hold again. Anna, exhausted, gazed at him with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. For in that moment she saw the man's heart uncovered, gentle, steady, willing to bear the weight of her pain. The child became the bridge between them. Little by little, laughter returned to the ranch. The baby's cries filled the halls, and with them came joy. Anna found herself smiling, her heart softening, and Jacob rediscovered a part of himself he thought was buried forever. He would hold the infant close, walking across the land at sunset, whispering to her about cattle, rivers, and skies. Anna watched him, her own heart aching with emotions she had never known: safety, belonging, the possibility of love. Still, shadows lingered. Anna feared the world's judgment, feared that her child would grow up marked by the stain of her past. She worried Jacob had only taken pity on her, that one day he might tire of carrying her burdens. Jacob, too, struggled to let go of his grief, haunted by the memory of the family he had lost. Yet, in each other, they found strength. Where she was weak, he was steady. Where he was silent, her gentle presence warmed the air. Slowly, their wounds began to knit together, not erasing the scars but building something stronger atop them. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the fields, Anna watched Jacob cradling her daughter, his weathered face softened by a smile she had never seen before. In that instant, she realized he was no longer just the lonely rancher who had bought her freedom. He was her protector, her companion, and perhaps the father her child was destined to have. Jacob, in turn, saw not just the frightened girl from the auction, but a woman of courage and grace who had survived abandonment and still dared to love her child fiercely. The ranch, once a place of silence and solitude, blossomed with new life. Flowers grew near the porch where Anna planted them. Laughter echoed across the yard, and the rocking chair creaked with the rhythm of late night lullabies. What began as an act of pity had transformed into something sacred. Family, forged not by blood but by choice, by courage, by love. If this story has touched your heart, I ask you with all sincerity, please like this video. Share it with someone who believes in the power of miracles. Leave a comment with your feelings, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support keeps these heartfelt stories alive, spreading hope where it's needed most. And now, dear listener, before we end, here's a special request. Write in the comments what kindness means to you, because your words may inspire someone else who desperately needs light in their darkest moment. The auction yard stank of dust, sweat, and despair. Beneath the scorching sun, the noise of cattle and the creak of wagons filled the air. But on that fateful afternoon, it wasn't livestock that drew the eyes of the crowd. It was a girl, young and trembling, her face pale, her hands pressed protectively over the swell of her belly. She stood barefoot, her dress thin and frayed, her shoulders stooped as though already broken by life. By her side, a woman with hard eyes and a sharper tongue pushed her forward, raising her voice for all to hear. She declared that her daughter was of no use anymore, that her pregnancy was a burden, that she could not and would not carry the shame or the cost. The crowd murmured, men shifting uncomfortably, women whispering in disbelief. Yet no one stepped forward. No one reached out a hand. They watched as if this were some grim spectacle, a punishment for choices unseen. And then, through the press of onlookers, a man stepped into the circle. His boots struck the dirt with steady rhythm, his broad shoulders carrying both strength and loneliness in equal measure. His face was lined not only by years of work under the sun, but by grief long carried in silence. This was Jacob, the rancher who lived at the edge of town, known more for his solitude than his words. He rarely came to gatherings, and when he did, he spoke little. Yet when his eyes fell on the girl, her trembling hands, her downcast gaze, her silent endurance, something in him shifted. Without a word, without hesitation, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the crumpled bills he had brought to buy supplies. He held them out, and with that simple act, the transaction was made. The mother snatched the money, eager to rid herself of the burden, and vanished into the crowd, leaving her daughter behind, as if she were nothing more than a discarded object. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to Stories Collection, so you never miss stories that touch the heart. Jacob did not speak as he led her away, offering only the comfort of silence. He placed her on his wagon, handed her a blanket against the dust and wind, and guided the horses toward his ranch. The road stretched long across golden fields and rolling hills, the horizon endless. For the girl, her name was Anna. It felt like being carried away to another world, one she neither trusted nor understood. She kept her arms wrapped around her belly, her eyes darting toward Jacob with suspicion and fear. He never forced her to speak, never asked questions, only focused on the path ahead. When they reached his land, she saw a house standing strong against the backdrop of sky, a place marked by solitude but not neglect. The days that followed were quiet, almost unbearably so. Anna moved through the house with cautious steps, as if every creak of the floor might betray her. She expected harshness, commands, perhaps even cruelty, for that was what she had been taught to expect from the world. But Jacob demanded nothing. He left food for her, fixed the fire so the room stayed warm, and spent his daylight hours in the fields tending to cattle. At night, he sat by the hearth with his old dog, his silence as steady as the ticking of the clock on the wall. Sometimes Anna would glance at him, wondering what kind of man bought a broken girl and asked for nothing in return. She found no answer. But trust is not built in a day. It is shaped by small, unnoticed moments. Jacob left fresh bread cooling on the table before dawn. He repaired a loose shutter so the wind would not rattle against her window at night. He carved a wooden cradle, his rough hands smoothing each edge until it gleamed like honey in the lamplight. Anna watched these gestures from afar, confusion and gratitude warring in her chest. For the first time in her life, she felt the faint stirrings of safety, though fear still lingered like a shadow at her side. One evening, a storm rolled across the plains. The wind screamed against the house, rain pelting the roof in sheets, thunder shaking the walls. Anna woke with a cry, clutching her belly, the pains of labor tearing through her. Panic filled her, memories of abandonment rushing back, but Jacob was at her side in moments. His hands, though calloused, were steady. He guided her through the long hours, his voice low, urging her to breathe, to hold on, to trust. The storm raged outside, but inside, another storm broke, one of pain and struggle, of life demanding to be born. When at last the cries of a newborn filled the room, Jacob lifted the tiny child with trembling hands, his eyes filled with tears, for it was as if the universe had returned to him what it once had taken away. Anna, exhausted but alive, reached for her daughter, and in Jacob's gaze, she saw something she had never seen before. A man broken by loss who had just found the miracle he thought he'd never hold again. The baby became the center of their world. Her cries filled the silent halls, her laughter echoed through the fields, and with her presence came change. Anna began to smile again, though shyly at first, her heart slowly mending. Jacob softened, his silence replaced by gentle murmurs as he held the child, rocking her beneath the endless sky. Yet shadows of doubt lingered. Anna feared the judgment of others, feared her child would grow up branded by shame. She wondered if Jacob's kindness was only pity, if one day he would send her away. Jacob, too, wrestled with ghosts, the memory of the wife he had lost, the child buried too soon, the fear that happiness could once again be stolen. But with each sunrise, hope grew stronger than fear. Together, they rebuilt not only a household but themselves. Anna planted flowers by the porch, bringing color to the barren land. Jacob repaired fences with renewed strength, each nail driven with purpose. They shared quiet meals, gentle laughter, and long evenings by the fire with the baby nestled between them. What began as a chance encounter at an auction grew into something sacred. Family forged by choice, by courage, by love. Years passed, and the ranch flourished. The child grew strong, her laughter chasing away the last echoes of sorrow. Anna and Jacob stood side by side, no longer strangers bound by circumstance, but partners bound by devotion. Their love was not sudden nor fairy. It was steady, like the turning of seasons, unshakable as the land beneath their feet. The town that once whispered now looked on in quiet respect, for they had witnessed a miracle, a lonely rancher who had given a broken girl a home, and in return found the family he had been waiting for all along. If this story has touched your heart, I ask you with all sincerity, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in the power of miracles, leave a comment with your feelings, and subscribe to Stories Collection. Your support keeps these heartfelt stories alive, spreading hope where it's needed most. And now, dear listener, before we end, here's a special request. Write in the comments what kindness means to you, because your words may inspire someone else who desperately needs light in their darkest moment.